Hi, I'm Fida Master Libby Cherbulenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis, of a chess.com game played between 1521 versus 1522. Let's start. Alright, so d4, d5, d5, black mirrors white, knight f3 developing the knight, knight f6, knight c3, okay. This is a little bit weird. We usually don't put the knight in front of a c pawn. A rule of thumb is we first move the c4 pawn and then we put the knight on c3. Why? Because if you play knight c3, black would just play, let's say, pawn c6, and now there's no real pressure on the central pawn because, you know, it's just guarded by the knight, by the pawn, I mean. Whereas if you play c4 and then knight c3, right, we attack the pawn with another pawn, you know, like a piece of the same value, right? So it's real pressure. Not only that, but also we could later on play queen b3, put even more pressure on the d5 pawn as well as on the b7 pawn. So that's the point. We have to put real pressure. Then the knight on c3 does something. Whereas if you play now knight c3, black can just play c6, and now your knight is just stuck. Literally has no moves. There's no pressure. Whereas we should always put pressure and make pawn breaks through our opponent's pawn center. Whenever our opponent has a pawn in the center, we have to always attack it using a pawn break. Alright, always put pressure. Never just leave your opponent's, you know, pawn center unattacked, you know. So knight c3 already is inaccurate. Okay, black decided to play pawn to c5. That's also fine. You know, that's actually also another point, by the way. Usually white plays c4 and black goes like c6, right, guarding the pawn. But another rule of thumb is if white does not play c4, if white does not attack black center, then black attacks white center and then plays knight c6. Black does what white should have done. So black applies white strategy, right? White does not attack you, then black attacks white, right, with c5 and then putting the knight behind the pawn and then attacking the d4 pawn and then opening up the queen, right? Let's see, pawn to c5, okay, dc, white just takes. Okay, this is, I mean, a common theme. Black is not afraid to lose this pawn. Why? It's a double pawn anyway, it will get lost soon anyway, because it's like quite difficult to defend. Black would play like this, and then take, like queen c7, maybe pawn e6, take with a bishop. So this is like very difficult to defend, and then when black takes the pawn back, they take the pawn back with interest, meaning they will get the pawn back, but in an improved situation. That's what I mean with interest, right? Because if white keeps the pawn on d4, let's say white goes like e3, white will, and let's say black takes at some point, white takes, white has this d4 pawn, white has one pawn in the center, which guards the, you know, the key squares, especially e5, key central square, and so white is fine, right? White controls the center. Whereas here, if white takes, eventually black takes the pawn back, and then white no longer has a pawn center, and then eventually black would push the e pawn to e5, and then have a two pawn center, right? They both get the pawn back and completely control the center. That's why it's risky. Really, you have to think about long term. Don't just think, oh, I win a pawn. Think long term. What if black regains a pawn and then pushes e5? He will have a two pawn center. That's why it's usually best not to take. It's usually best to always keep one pawn, to keep a pawn on d4. When they take, always make sure you take back with another pawn. Let's say e3 takes, right? This way you control especially the e5 square. Whereas if you like take with a piece, again, black will just play e5 and may have a two pawn center. Okay, so this is key to understand. Okay, black chose to play e6, all right. Knight to e5. I mean, you may think, oh, why not just go b4? Well, that's, you know, that's weakening. Then black would just play a5. Typical idea. We attack, right, the pawn chain, and now white collapses. White would like to play a3 to maintain this pawn chain, but unfortunately he cannot, because rook on a1, I mean, it's loose. Black just takes, and when it takes, just win the rook. Okay, and so then white would have to what? Either push, but then we just lose a pawn, or take. But then again, black would just take here, and then this pawn will get lost, or black would take here, attacking the knight, attacking this one, and again, the pawn will just get lost, and black actually has the initiative, right? So again, black gets the pawn back with interest. That's why it's just not worth it. Think long term, okay? So it's actually better to give up a pawn, you know, but develop properly, you know, and not weaken yourself even more. So Yeah, I mean, 95, white played 95 in the game. I don't really see the point. Like, you move the same piece twice, that's a mistake. You violate basic opening principles. Don't move the same piece twice. Like, white wants to attack. It's not realistic to attack with just one knight. White does not have enough pieces developed to have a real attack. So then this is like unrealistic. You don't play 95 and hoping to attack with just one piece. Much better would be to play something like, let's say, I don't know, bishop g5, right? Develop your bishop. And then you can play e3 or e4, put the bishop outside the chain, and then close the chain. Let's say black goes bishop c5. At the very least, of course, you could just play e3, but now the bishop is not stuck on c1, it's open. Then you could play bishop d3, castle, and you're fine. Or maybe you could even play e4. Even more interesting, right? Develop this bishop, put pressure on the d5 pawn, you know, threatening also by the way e5, which the knight is pinned, but also putting pressure on the d5 pawn. You know, and if they take, I mean, we could just take the queen. Now black cannot castle. Now we can take on e4, attacking the bishop, attacking the knight's pinned. Let's say bishop e7, long castle. We, you know, secure our king with check, with tempo. See? And this is good play for white. So this would have made much more sense. So my point is, in the opening, really prioritize, you know, go white. Don't go deep. Meaning, go white first, develop all the pieces, and then move one piece multiple times. In the middle game, we first go white, meaning develop each piece once, and then in the middle game we can go deeper, meaning with certain pieces we can, you know, we can improve them and make more moves. So 94 is just completely premature. Yeah, it's just a mistake. Okay, bishop takes c5. By the way, black also could have played maybe like, although I was thinking queen c7, attacking the knight. But maybe it's not so clear, because now I have like bishop f4, threatening knight g6, you know, attacking the queen, and also attacking the rook on h8, but maybe black can play, it's getting complicated, knight h5, yeah, getting complicated. Okay, bishop c5 is probably the easiest. Okay, bishop g5, okay, now white finally develops his bishop, alright, but again, the knight on e5, it looks dangerous, but just because it looks dangerous doesn't mean it is. Like, there's no real pressure, like, can go here, this is guarded, especially after black castles. Like, it can just get, you know, loose. It can just get loose. And loose pieces tend to be lost, alright? So, try not to have loose pieces. Always make sure that your pieces, you know, are defended, in defended positions, okay? Okay, h6, attacking the bishop, alright. Bishop h4, keeping the tension. Okay, this is good, good move. Knight c6. Okay, offers the exchange. Another strategy would be to, you know, not exchange, but later on maybe attack it. Maybe even like with bishop d6 stuff, you know, or eventually with queen c7, and make white, you know, move the knight back. So that would be another strategy, right? To use the fact that the knight is loose and, you know, develop pieces with tempo. Yeah. But okay, knight c6. Okay, takes, alright. White should be a little bit happy, I think. Yeah, why not? Should take, because now he won't have a loose knight anymore. So I think white should be happy about this trade. Okay, bc, e4, good move. Good move. You know, playing actively, developing the bishop, putting pressure on d5, threatening e5, right? The knight is pinned, remember? So e4, should be a good move. Okay, g5, attacking the bishop. Bishop g3, bishop takes b4. I mean, knight e4, white should have probably good compensation. Can just take, and now we could, I don't know if we should, maybe we shouldn't trade. There's like queen e2, obviously, right? Attacking the e4 pawn, maybe rook d1. Ideally, one long castle, but I mean, the queen probably won't allow it, right? But queen should be one move, attacking the e4 pawn. There's also queen h5, pressuring these pawns, and then again rook d1. White should have some compensation, because like the king is pretty weak. We're also threatening, let's say like queen h5, we're also threatening h4. Another typical idea, remember, whenever you see that a pawn is advanced, which is usually the fifth rank if you're white, right? Always make pawn breaks to advanced pawns. You see an advanced pawn on the fifth rank, pawn break. See a pawn on g5, h4. See a pawn on b5, a4. Whenever you see an advanced pawn, you make a pawn break. Okay, and so I think white has a pretty good compensation. Black's king is in the center, double pawns, poor bishop, weak d file for black, active queen for white, h4 next, threatening hg. And if black takes, we still can take like with a rook or the bishop, opening up the h file. This is pretty good compensation for white. There's also bishop p5 attacking the rook, so looks pretty good. Looks yeah, from a practical standpoint, it looks like compensation. Yeah. So, but black decided to go bishop b4. Maybe this is the reason why. Okay, ed. I mean, bishop e5 actually looks interesting, because black can take with bishop h8, you know. If we take on c3, we just take, and again black can take with bishop h8, and if we go de, we just take. Takes and bishop f6, attacking the king and the rook. So, that's another rule of thumb. Keep the tension. Like, usually, the first one who releases the tension is worse. Like, people make mistakes. When there's tension, at some point they make mistakes. So this is like a pro tip. Keep the tension, and at some point your opponent will be the first one to take, and it's usually worse for him if he takes first. The one who releases the tension first loses the initiative. The more you can keep the tension, the more games you'll win, because people crumble under tension. When you take, here's another point. When you take, your opponent cannot make a mistake. He on autopilot will make the move. Because it's obvious you took, he has no option but to take it somehow, this or this way, and he just takes back. So he doesn't need to think, he cannot make a mistake. He can respond on autopilot. Versus, when you go bishop e5, he does not have an autopilot move. He can make a mistake and take, or you know, or if he doesn't take, he needs to think, okay, how do I play? So he either takes, okay, without thinking and loses, or he has to figure out some other way, but it's no longer on autopilot, and he can make a mistake. Do you see? That's my point. When you just exchange, he should just take back. So it's an autopilot move, he cannot make a mistake. Whereas when you don't make a move after which he has only one response, then he has to think, and then he wastes time, and also he can make a mistake. All right, so this is another pro tip. Okay, let's see, bishop takes, wait, white took, yeah, which is not the best. Okay, black takes, okay, I mean, I don't see the reason. The knight's pinned anyway. Do you see, this is what I said earlier, like they release the tension too soon. White take on c3. Like black can always take on c3, the knight is pinned, why rush? There's no need to rush, but yeah, they just took, releasing the tension too soon. Okay, bc, knight takes d5, okay, pawn to c4, attacking the knight. Yeah, this is, I mean, this actually should have been interesting, attacking the rook. Queen d4, I think, you know, attacking the rook. And then also we have h4 ideas. We can always play c4, maybe even bring a rook to d1, maybe even long castle, depending on the situation, h4, you know, stuff like that. The reason I'm saying c4 is like, yeah, queen a5, this is what I want to say. Queen a5 is interesting for black. But white still should be fine. White still should be fine, I guess. Let's see, queen d2, yep. Knight c3, wait, knight c3. Now this knight will be pinned to the queen, not so sure. I was thinking knight b4 makes more sense. Why? Because the threat is knight, oops, the threat is knight c2. Can't take the queen because it's pinned. Now this is more interesting. This is more, and then white, how does white play? Maybe like rook c1 to defend. Again, knight h2 not possible because we just take, and queen h2 we just take. So maybe like rook c1, there's also like bishop d3, takes, pawn takes. But this definitely, I think, would be much better than knight c3. I think black should have played like this. Or take the queen and then move a knight, you know. But not knight c3, this doesn't seem good. Okay, let's see, bishop e2. We have a knight spin. How do we put pressure on the knight? H4, by the way, would have been also good. H4. Threatening hg, the rook's unguarded. And if they take, we can like take maybe, I don't know, with the rook. Activate the rook, right? Looks pretty good. I mean, black's king is so weak. So h4 or bishop d3, I think also makes sense. Because on e2, See, the problem with e2, we wanna castle next, but then we have knight takes e2 with check. That's how we escape a pin, with check. Whereas if we go bishop d3 and then we castle, knight e2 with check, I mean, we just take with a queen, right? Knight e2 just queen takes e2. So I'd say bishop d3 just overall looks like very logical. Maybe there are also other moves. Might be, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, bishop d3, h4. There's ideas even like rook d1, you know, pressuring the d file, and then we can take, also we take the queen. You know, so rook d1 also looks interesting. There's also, yeah, h4. Yeah, but not bishop e2. Bishop e2 I think is not the best. Okay, castles. Do you see? If we played h4, then it would be very risky for him to castle, you know? Because like, let's say he castles, we could like take, then ideas like rook h5, pressuring the pawn, right? And black is in big danger. But okay, let's see. Castles. Ooh. Now white just allows black to take on e2 with check. See, this is what I mentioned earlier. Not good. Not good at all. Okay, rook d8. Bishop d3. Yeah, I mean, black should have taken while he could. Yeah. But okay, rook d8 he played instead. Bishop d3. Okay, now when I spinned again. Okay, bishop a6. Okay. Rook e1. Bishop c4. Bishop b5. This is a pretty good bishop. Very good bishop. Bishop takes d3. cd. Yeah, and now how do they impin the knight? Yeah, they cannot impin the knight. I just lose the knight. Yeah. Queen a2. Okay. Queen takes c3. I mean, white is just up a piece and the king is super weak. Dark squares. It's just checkmate basically next, like that. Let's see. Here. Bishop h8. Yeah, and just queen g7. Basically checkmate next. And black resigned. Okay, I hope you enjoyed. If so, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.